A warm welcome from me to this art talk, as we call it. My name is Christl Novakovic. I'm responsible for wealth management in Europe for UBS. We are a partner of CHART this year. We are very honored and happy to be part of CHART this year. Now, we've been talking a lot about climate change, and we thought sustainability would be a good topic for us to talk about. How can sustainability be achieved in the art world? What can, on the one side, artists, but also gallerists, art fairs, and collectors do to ensure that this entire space also becomes a little bit more sustainable and contributes to what we call climate change? So let me welcome Victoria Siddall. She should be on the screen now. Thank you, Victoria, for joining us. So this is probably already your first contribution to sustainability of not having taken a plane to come and be here, but join us via video. So Victoria Siddall, she's a founding member of the Gallery Climate Coalition, and you will talk in a minute a little bit more about what Gallery Climate Coalition is. Then we have Claus Andersen. I don't think I need to introduce Claus Andersen. His gallery is up here and shows beautiful art, I have to say. Obviously, we have Nanna Hjortenberg. I hope I pronounce it correctly. And you are the director of CHART since 2018. And so probably it's fair to say that one of the reasons why in the last years, obviously, we have seen this increased success of CHART is also thanks to you, and I think we all are really, really glad for what you're doing for this fair. But let's start right into the topic, and I would start really with you, Victoria. Tell us a little bit about Gallery Climate Coalition. Why is it that you thought we needed to have an organization like this, and what is the problem of sustainability or carbon emission in the arts world?
Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. Thank you for that great introduction. But as you say, it's quite topical to have not got on a plane, given the subject matter of our talk. So when it comes to art and the impact of art on environmental issues, there are two distinct aspects to consider. One is the sort of vital and really powerful role that art and artists can play in terms of influencing and inspiring people and effecting change. And I'm sure we'll touch on this today as well. The second is the more practical question of how, as a community and an industry, we cut our carbon emissions. And Gallery Climate Coalition, or GCC, as I'm going to refer to it as, because it's a little easier to say, falls into this second camp. It's an international charity and membership organization and provides environmental sustainability goals and guidelines and resources for the entire art sector. The name implies that it's for galleries, and that is how it began, actually, as a group of galleries and writers. But actually now our members include museums, artists, individuals, businesses all over the world. So it's really the whole art sector, which is actually what makes it work. And it came about through this sort of group of individuals, all of whom cared very passionately about this subject. But as individuals and small businesses, it's quite difficult to find the guidance and the tools to actually make changes. You know, the strength really is in numbers in this case. We realized that we could have far more strength and impact as a coalition, both in terms of galvanizing and supporting our industry, but also in terms of lobbying power. The shared goals, as you've said brilliantly, are very simple. The main one is a 50% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. So all of our members sign up to this aim. And essentially what we're trying to achieve is that across the art industry. That's in line with the Paris Agreement, so not sort of plucked out of the air. And the second is a zero waste policy, which means no material sort of going to landfill. We now have 800 members in 20 countries all over the world, an incredible response that I think would not have been the same had this launched 10 years ago. So this really is something that it feels like there's a huge momentum in this conversation. So the first thing we produced when we launched GCC was a carbon calculator that was tailored to the art world. So it's mainly focused around travel, shipping. It's online, it's on the Gallery Climate Coalition website, and it's free to use. And actually, it's kind of interesting to play with, I found, because you can just type in London to Los Angeles, return in business class, and it'll tell you roughly what your carbon emissions would be from that flight. And if every time you take a flight through the year, if every time you ship something, if every time you pay an energy bill, you add it into the calculator and you're logged in, at the end of the year, it will give you a carbon audit. Free of charge, relatively straightforwardly. So that's really the first step, is understanding your footprint. The second is to reduce, and of course that is more challenging. But what we've done as GCC is produce resources, working with environmentalists, I would say. Like a lot of people outside of the art world have inputted on this. And those resources are built around the kind of key areas that we know of, such as I said, travel, shipping, also packaging materials. There's really interesting resources there on kind of alternative packaging materials, circularity, digital and NFTs, conservation, and building energy as well, of course, and new buildings. So reducing is the kind of, the next key step. And that's what GCC aims to sort of help the art world to achieve over the coming years. And then the third thing, actually, is it's actually donating. It's looking outside of the art world and looking at who is having the biggest impact on the planet, essentially, like who is making the biggest strides in combating climate change. So what we recommend is making a donation based on a cost per tonne of your emissions towards a strategic climate fund.
Thank you very much. So first of all, it looks like we found a new member for our Global Climate Coalition. So this is, a great result already of this podium discussion. Claus, you're a gallerist, it looks like this all resonates with you.
Totally.
Where do you think, and I like Victoria's comment about, had we done this 10 years ago, it probably wouldn't have worked because the sense of urgency wasn't there. Today we have this sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. So, but what is it that you believe galleries could do more? Or do you think that galleries feel the pressure? Is it something that collectors, in your conversation with collectors, does this topic come up?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh.
To be honest, I don't feel the pressure, let's say, from collectors or, unfortunately, I mean artists. Some of my artists, for sure, yes. I'm working with Thomas Harsteno, and for him it's a huge issue. But for some of the others, I must admit that it's not such a big issue. I mean, on a daily basis, yes, but not when it comes to our business. And my wish would be actually that the artist would have, apart from the art they're doing, would be much more concerned about how their galleries are working in terms of environment. And they could make a much, much bigger pressure by, let's say, we don't want our work shipped by air freight. They could just say that. They won't, because then they have to be in due time. They don't love to be in due time. But then it would be much easier. As well as I would say that art fairs could also say we don't want to show works flown in, which would be, a problem, but not a huge problem at the end of the day. So I think that because why I'm talking air freight is because that's the most obvious thing to reduce. And then secondly comes packaging, crating. Then the last but not least also is our own, what is called, when we fly privately or business-wise. That, of course, we can reduce as well. Did I?
I'm surprised to hear that collectors are not bringing up the topic, because my experience is that if the end client, and at the end of the day, the buyer, the collector is the client, if it's not a problem for the client, it's difficult to drive change, right? So what can we do to ensure that collectors start... let me phrase it differently. Yeah. I think collectors need to realize how much power they have in driving change in the art world, right? Were they to ask the galleries, the museums, the art fairs, whatever, to be a little bit more careful about how, how we deal with the topic. So what is it that CHART has done this year differently to actually contribute to our planet? So what is the theme sustainability for CHART? What have we done this year?
One of the things I think that's as an important outset for us is that from the very beginning we have been regionally based. So the galleries showing in the fair are all from the Nordic region. We cater to the region so that we don't have to fly that many people in. A lot of, nearly all the works, if they're produced regionally, arrive by car or by truck. What we also did last year and the previous years is that all the food you can buy here are produced by locally based Danish brands or brands with a high focus on sustainability in their product. We actually, I forgot to say, in 2019 we had a full report done on the fair. So as Victoria mentioned, first you need the data. Where are our issues? What can we do? Where do we consume the most? So, and since then, it's been local producers for the food. We are based in the city of Copenhagen, which has a really sort of thorough system of selecting garbage or dividing garbage into different categories already. So there we're helped by being inside the city. We use very little energy and so on.
Victoria, you said something which I believe is key to the whole improvement is you need to start measuring, right? So if you don't know at which level you are, it's difficult to improve. So tell me, have you done some research on the industry? How dirty is this industry? So where do we start in terms of the need to improve?
We know that the art world is not the biggest polluter in the world. You know, it's really a tiny percentage of global emissions. But what we do have, and actually to Claus's point about the people who buy the art, you know, we have influence and impact. And the people that we deal with, both artists who have, you know, incredible influence and impact through their work, but also the people who buy art who might have incredible political connections or run big businesses themselves. You know, we also have the opportunity to lead by example and to be kind of forerunners in this, you know, sort of race against climate change, which is an amazing opportunity. And I think the art world is really well positioned to be, you know, ahead of the game in this sense. We do have carbon audits, which many galleries have now completed using the GCC calculator or through their own means, and then submitted to GCC. I actually have some, if you're interested in seeing them on the screen. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
It's, I find it kind of interesting to see it visually broken down, as we all do tend to be quite visual people. So can you see this on the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is from Modern Art Gallery, Stuart Shave's gallery in London, which is a kind of medium-sized gallery with 2 spaces in London, but no spaces outside of London, just to contextualize. I don't know if you can read the text here, but essentially the red is travel. So for this gallery, travel made up the majority of their carbon emissions. The blue is shipping. The green is building energy. And then there's a tiny, tiny other sort of, you know, aspects. But this, I feel, really focuses the mind because you can see travel and shipping are kind of where it's all at. Another type of gallery, Hauser and Wirth. Obviously, Hauser and Wirth, very large gallery with spaces in many countries all over the world, on different continents. For them, it's shipping that's the biggest. So over half of their carbon emissions are from shipping. And then again, travel is the next largest, and building energy and green. For something a little different, which is interesting, Nottingham Contemporary is a sort of medium-sized institution in the UK. They used GCC's calculator to calculate their carbon emissions from 2019. And as you can see, it's nearly 90% building energy. So for them, it's a different approach. You know, it's a slightly different issue. But again, I'm showing this as well because, again, to kind of, you know, to illustrate the importance of measuring. Like if you just try and take a one-size-fits-all approach to artist studios, commercial galleries, museums, it's not particularly helpful because everyone's actually got very different looking audits. So the resources we're now producing are obviously, tailored towards firstly commercial galleries, but we're now developing specific resources for museums, for artists, and so on, based on their different needs. And we will come to collectors as well. So Claus, we'll talk a little further down the line. Mm-hmm. A couple of other interesting things just to look at. I think, again, I find it very helpful to see this on screen. Again, I'm not sure if you can read this, but this graphic shows the difference in CO2 emissions used on a trip between London and Hong Kong to freight and work, essentially. The yellow is air freight, and the green is the comparative emissions from sea freight for the same work. So it's an enormous difference. I think it's something like 60 times the amount of emissions from air freighting work as opposed to sea freighting. It takes longer. It comes with its own set of issues. There's insurance to consider, which is why we're also lobbying the insurance industry. But interesting just to understand how that breaks down. And then another thing we modeled as well was the difference between flying to Basel from Berlin on a plane or taking the train. So again, in this case, it was 440 kilograms of CO2 by plane and 20 by train. Again, focuses the minds.
But then let's ask a mean question. We all love art fairs, and we all love these beautiful events where we meet collectors and artists, and I don't know if any of you goes regularly to Art Basel. I do. What do you think is the future of how we display art and how we sell art?
I don't think that the galleries can live without art fairs, as it's extremely important. The question is, of course, how many you should participate in, and as the competition is right now within the galleries, you could say have to participate in quite a lot, because let's say the artist doesn't play such a big role in dividing the works between the galleries. That could play a big role, saying, listen, you're seriously going to take care of Asia now, you're going to take care of Europe and so on. But I think that an art fair has such a big impact when somebody is flying in, let's say from Berlin, maybe they should take the train, but let's say they're flying in for an art fair, compared to a collector flying for a dinner one night or an opening of an artwork in Denmark. I think that's maybe the more decadent part that we should start thinking about and take responsibility for. When we have, let's say, a huge artwork working wherever, we're inviting like 100 collectors, all flying in for one evening, one work. Does that make sense? I don't think so. And that could be changed, but I think an art fair, because it has such a big impact, so I think we should change part of it, of course.
But it sounds like, listening to you, and Victoria, I'll come to you in a moment, it sounds like there's so much we can do in the way we transport the artworks to the various fairs, also by which materials we are using. Can we reuse materials, because a lot of the stuff just gets thrown away after every art fair, right? Mm-hmm. So it looks like there is a lot of stuff that we can do, because I tend to agree with the two of you that art fairs are such an important element of our cultural heritage, and how we also learn about other cultures and other art, in other countries. And we've seen after the COVID, where a number of art fairs didn't happen, as soon as they reopened, the amount of people that went, because they were so longing for going to an art fair, going to meet people and collectors. And at the end of the day, we as people, we cannot be alone in our house looking at digital art only. We really want to share this experience with others. But I believe there is a way. We probably can do it in a much, much better way. But Victoria, you've done so much work on it. So tell us, is there a future for art fairs? I know it's devil's advocate, but
I spent many years running the Frieze fairs and looking at, what it means for London to have Frieze happen at that time, not just for the galleries, the commercial galleries, but also for the museums, for the artists who live here, you know, what it meant for Los Angeles to have a moment, like an international moment that was made it the kind of, you know, the sort of focal point of the international art world for that week. It is really impactful and definitely goes beyond just the kind of commerce of buying and selling art. I think that, you know, the way I've always viewed it is that, you know, the cities that we're in, yes, these are international fairs, but like London, New York, LA, they're cities that people are going to probably go to once a year. So come, but make that your one trip a year, you know, come for the week. Don't just come for a dinner, come and see everything. And know that as well, as I'm sure is the case in Copenhagen this week. You know, this is the moment where you will see the best of everything. The best museum shows, the best gallery shows, everyone will be there. There's an efficiency to it, in a sense, because you have all these people and all this incredible art under one roof from, you know, many different backgrounds and parts of the world. And at Frieze, we first did our first carbon audit in 2010, so it was quite some time ago. We discovered that the biggest change we could make was a switch in the type of energy we used to biofuel. And finally, in 2019, the right products came onto the market, something called Green D. And that cut our emissions of Frieze London, the London fairs, by 60% overnight, just by switching fuel, which is great. But the fact is, the event itself isn't that big an emitter. It doesn't, you know, its carbon footprint isn't huge. It's all the people who travel to the fair, all the art that is shipped to the fair, that's outside of, like, the fair itself isn't making decisions about how that's done, but they are essentially generating it and to therefore take some responsibility for it. So, I mean, the next step really is, again, it's back to all of the things we've been talking about, with GCC particularly, which is how people travel, how art is shipped. And that's why, again, the whole art world needs to sort of work together on solutions to those issues. And I think it's not a question of stopping doing things. It's just a matter of really doing the proper research and collaborating on how to do it better.
So it really sounds like everybody needs to play the role here, right? It's like the gallerists, the art fairs, the museums, the artists. We need the artists to also raise the voice on the topic, and the collectors. Nanna, sorry.
It's a very short example, but with CHART in 2020, we decided to sort of struggle with the gender balance in the art fair. It's a different topic, also a really important one. So we decided to ask all galleries to only show women artists for that 1 year, and basically, essentially, we wanted to sort of to raise the issue and bring it to the attention of everyone. And this year we have a fully gender balanced fair for the first time without having to struggle for it. It kind of grew organically out of that, because I think the sort of acknowledgement took place across the entire sort of chain of agents that we work with, and it gives me a little hope that if we find the right way to raise attention to the issue and rally behind it as an industry, and also as using the fair for the get-together of the entire industry, we can't tackle it in 2 years, but we can. I think we could impact it much more.
So it sounds like 1 year we will have to have a fair where the topic is sustainability.
Yeah,
right?
We just have to wait till the works arrive by boat rather than by flight. We have to travel a little less fast, and all of these things. But I think if you feel that you're part of a community where everyone does it, it's not that bad.
Okay, Claus.
Yeah, I just want to add that imagine that the art fairs would say we won't show works shown by air freight. I mean, it's not such a big deal. I mean, why not just do it? And you don't have, the art fairs doesn't have to play policeman and running around and check it, but at least we ask you politely too. And you can see how the emission of the air freight is, and it's by far the biggest impact for a gallery. So I think that would be a starting point, at least. Huh?
It needs courage, right? It needs courage for a large art fair to say, in particular one that has very international, galleries to say. But probably it's a question of organization. You just need to build in time. We all need to learn, from the collectors to the artists to the galleries, we need to learn. But I think the most important message for me today is like we all need to work together and think about this together. It's not that the gallerist alone can do it or the fairs alone can do it. It starts with us in this room, right? It's like, like the whole climate change topic is something that we only can change if we all work together up to the governments. Now, we only have 2 minutes left, and I would like to hear from the three of you, what is it, what do you think is going to have the biggest impact besides the shipping, besides the cradling? What is it that we personally, each and one of us, can do that would have the biggest impact in, you know, topic like sustainability in the art world? Who starts?
Well, that was a tough one.
Yeah, because you have different
Apart from
roles,
that, yeah.
so, and you have decision power. So, what is it that you can do from your perspective? Who wants to start?
Apart from air freight and
Yes.
packaging,
Yes.
travel less. One thing. I think it's about travel, I would say. Also, not only my personal travel, business travel, but also, let's say, inviting guests. I think it doesn't make sense, as I said before, to invite them for one single evening and get 50 people to fly from the States. Those things, I think we should start to consider how much we're actually basically asking people to use airplanes. Huh? I would think something like that. That would be...
Tough decision, though, for a businessman, right? I mean, at the end of the day...
Listen, it is a tough decision, and it's going to cost a lot of money, but it's going to cost even more for my children.
If we don't do it.
And that's basically my point of view. It's like, you can't do anything without a price.
I would say, if I was asked what's one thing that everybody can do, it's just to educate yourself on this topic. It's free. All this information is out there. It's all on the internet. Pretty much everything I've said today is even on the GCC website, and everything that's there we've learned from other experts in the field just by talking to people, researching. And, you know, I knew nothing about this topic really a couple of years ago. I mean, I thought I knew a bit, but, you know, it's really just been from having these conversations.
No, I totally agree on you, Victoria,
Yeah.
that what you say, that consciousness. I mean, 5 years ago, I'm pretty sure you would have been here, right? I mean, and now today you're there. That's kind of, is this travel really necessary? Not really. This works as well.
Yeah, for an hour of conversation.
Yeah, of course you miss a lot.
Definitely, I can tell you,
But
miss
the
a lot.
important issues are coming through.
Yes,
So.
absolutely. So, thank you all three. It was a great discussion, very honest, very open. Thank you very much. I thank you all for attending, and I wish you a continuous wonderful chart. And it's the second time in my life in Copenhagen. You love in an amazing city. Cherish it. Okay. Thank you.